You're the one saying that you're going to save our economy and drastically reform it, and nobody can provide any specifics.
We got some big things coming down the pipe here for Remembrance Day. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we've got Donald Trump nervous about his tariffs getting struck down by the court and having to repay not billions but trillions of dollars to countries around the world. We got Vasi Capello's grilling a Carney minister on this new Buy Canadian policy, which has no real plan to actually buy Canadian, how it'll actually work. Got a bunch of other stuff here. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, we've got talk of UBI once again back on the menu here. Technically, this is a guaranteed livable basic income. It's different than UBI, but the big difference here is universal basic income would be everyone gets it, where guaranteed livable basic income is only low income earners get it. That's the basic difference here. And once again, the Liberals tried this before. It's going through the Senate. It would have to get out of the Senate. It would have to get voted for. This is going to get voted down again, as it always does, because this would bankrupt Canada. We don't have the money for this. Instead, they should be cutting taxes and making life affordable for everyone, but that's not going to happen. Moving ahead, we've got table salt with this one. So apparently we've got Mark Dalton MP breaking down what happened with Chris D'Entremont here. Said after the 2021 election, 3 Conservative MPs, including himself, D'Entremont, ran for Deputy Speaker. Conservative MPs had an internal vote. Chris narrowly won. The next time around here, he just wanted to be appointed. He didn't want to have a vote. They went to a vote. Chris lost the vote to Tom Cpac. He was very upset about this. He says attempts to placate D'Entremont were futile. He thought he was owed this position, but he was not. And when it came down to it, that extra $51,000 a year that the Deputy Speaker gets was a major factor here. Because he lost that Deputy Speaker role, he went from $209,000 plus $51,000, about $260, back down to $209,000. The party voted for the Speaker. That was it. That's Mark Dalton's take on this. If Chris wants to speak up and give his side of this, at this point, we'll just have to take this as he said. When it comes down to it, Chris betrayed his community. With that said, I'll post the full speech Chris D'Entremont gave to his constituents on my second channel, talking about how he supports Poilievre and the Conservatives and all that. I'll link up my second channel at the end of this video. With it being Remembrance Day, we got Josh Ryan posting this. On this Remembrance Day, we remember the day that the Liberals literally invited and welcomed the SS Waffen funny mustache guy into the House of Commons and then tried to memory hole it. Yeah, they tried to scrub that from the records that they brought in a WW2 funny mustache guy. These people are unbelievable. Got more talk about measles because they don't want to talk about Carney's budget. Alberta's role in Canada's loss of measles elimination status embarrassing. This is just more propaganda from the CBC. Alberta accounts for 38%, so let's blame Alberta, not Ontario. That has a larger portion of these measles outbreaks. Not to mention, this is coming from people outside of Canada. Most Canadians have their pokey pokes on measles. As I showed in the previous video, Mark Marison, this is Christy Clark's ex-husband, posting this filth. People who have brought measles back are the new base for Poilievre's Conservative Party. Like, this is disgusting. You see so many of these comments, just uneducated losers. As we see this graph here, the measles come in here. Yeah, it's because there's so many people from Pakistan and India. These are the top number of cases coming from these countries. India's #1 immigration. Pakistan is high on the list too. Lots of people coming from these countries bringing measles in, and then a bunch of other immigrants who have come in who don't have their pokey poke either. They're getting infected by it. It's not Canadians spreading this. It's not Canadians bringing this in. Of course, Liberals don't like the facts, such as with this character. This is a university professor, Professor Riot Diondian, epidemiologist and research chair in university teaching University of Ottawa, posting this. Peeps, I'll be live on CTV's Your Morning in Ottawa tomorrow morning at 7:10 a.m. talking about Canada losing our measles elimination status. Fun times, no Ross Perot mentions at this time. And then you got this guy here replying, well, you talk about how many illegals in Canada contributed to this and not anti-V word. No, because unlike you, I'm not an effing idiot. This is what a university professor wrote on Twitter. This university professor, Riwat Diondian, PhD epidemiology and biostatistics. What kind of idiots do we have running our universities? This guy has so many degrees, and yet he's a complete idiot. But according to himself here, he has good hair. And he's a teller of stupid jokes. These are the kind of people educating young Canadian minds. Moving ahead, we got Kirk with this one. Food prices increasing here. This time it's chicken going up 20 to 25%. And the reason for that is because beef has gone up so much that beef eaters are now switching over to chicken. And now chicken prices are going up. Welcome to Canada. Got this one here from Melissa. Yikes, another human trafficking network busted running from Montreal to the United States or vice versa, generating at least $1 million in 7 months. CBSA bust uncovers Mexican cartel hotel network in Montreal high-rise, moving hundreds across Canada-US border. Welcome to the Liberals Canada. So this one breaking from the Bureau San Cooper's website. Everything is getting busted after Trump came into power. Well, speaking of Donald Trump, he's not having a good day as we have this. Holy crap, President Trump now confirming if the Supreme Court strikes down his tariffs, the total amount paid back will exceed $3 trillion. U.S. Supreme Court was given the wrong numbers. The unwind in the event of a negative decision on tariffs would be including investments made to be made and the return of funds in excess of $3 trillion. It would not be possible to make up for that kind of drubbing. That would truly become an insurmountable national security event and devastating to the future of our country, possibly non-sustainable. This single event here will cement Donald Trump's ability to negotiate treaty deals, basically his entire current platform in America. Now, sure, he can pivot to other things, but tariffs is the backbone of it, the bread and butter of what he's doing there. If this gets struck down and Trump has to give back the money and remove the tariffs off Canada, that's good for Mark Carney. This is a tough situation because we want to get Carney out of here, but we also want to get rid of these tariffs. Moving over to CTV, we got Patty Hyju here getting destroyed by Vasi Capellos. How will Buy Canadian policy work? Nobody knows because we rely on America as a trading partner.
There are things that we're investing in partnership with provinces. So $51 billion to small and rural municipalities in my riding, but also larger municipalities for infrastructure that we need. You know, this will be an opportunity to work with provinces, territories, and municipalities to see if we can't use that money also to stimulate using Canadian product. And you mentioned lumber. That is obviously very important in Northern Ontario as well as steel. So
Carney got absolutely destroyed in New Brunswick on lumber. He had no idea how to answer those questions because they have to sell their lumber to America. So he came up with this policy. He announced this whole thing in New Brunswick, and they're like, what are you talking about? We need to sell our wood to America. And he's like, oh, we'll buy it here. Buy Canada. It's like, we don't have enough people to sustain the amount that we sell. That's the point. We need to deal with America.
Are at a moment where we need to really all pull together at all levels of government to make sure our Canadian companies are thriving.
And again, just one final question on this. I understand how good that sounds, especially at this moment in time, but isn't it problematic that nobody in your government can articulate any specifics about what this will achieve?
I don't think it is. I don't think it's problematic at all, actually. I think it's ambitious of the government.
Yeah, she doesn't think it's problematic at all. Not a problem. We're just going to keep doing the same crap. Canadians will keep getting the same crappy results. No problem. She's still getting her paycheck.
To be tackling trade in a way that actually prioritizes Canadian companies and is what Canadians expect right now. It's what Canadians are doing, actually. Canadians every single day are making decisions to buy products that are Canadian in nature, whether it's food, whether it's clothing, whether it's equipment, and they're doing, an incredible amount of work to protect the businesses, large, medium, and small, that exist here in the Canadian landscape. We can do that as well, and we will.
Again, I get that, but your government isn't just an everyday Canadian. You're the one saying that you're going to save our economy and drastically reform it, and nobody can provide any specifics about how the component parts will actually do that. In any event, your file is directly related to affordability. So, Minister, I do want to ask you about that. Can you help Canadians who are in particular hurting right now from an economic perspective understand why there wasn't anything new in this budget? Not to say nothing, because there was pre-announced stuff, but anything new in this budget to address a lack of affordability?
Well, I think there are a number of things in the budget that address affordability, both on the side of bringing costs down for Canadians, but also on the side of making sure that Canadians have opportunities in the work.
Like what? Chicken's going up 25%. Your tax cut, $40 a month? That's pitiful. They talk about the first-time homebuyer credit. That doesn't help 95% of first-time homebuyers. Everything they do is for themselves.
Force that are hopefully better paying through skills training, but also that are stimulating the economy in a number of ways. And that investment in infrastructure, for example, is one way that you saw the building trades unions talk about how this is so welcome for skilled tradespeople, for example, to make sure that there's a consistency of work across the country. You know, childcare is saving Canadian families thousands of dollars every year. In some cases, families with multiple children are
Yeah, which families though? It's a small percentage that gets to participate in that. There's thousands of families that don't get to. There's a long waiting list, like 4 years long. How is it fair for all Canadians to pay for only a very select few get to benefit from that program? That's ridiculous. Just make everything cheaper for everyone.
We're talking about $10,000 a year in savings, $15,000 a year in savings, depending on the province that they're in. There's a middle class tax cut for over 22 million Canadians. Just today, I was at an event in my riding, and a couple came up to me and told me about how dental care has provided them an opportunity to get dental treatment for the first time in 7 years for both of them.
Yeah, but our debt servicing charge now is more than our medical transfers. We can't afford this. You're passing the buck to your kids and your great-grandchildren to pay for all this crap. We don't have money for this. We should be setting up oil and gas, LNG, nuclear technology all over Canada and exporting this everywhere. Right now, they want to set up a clean grid. We can't export clean electricity to anywhere else aside from America, the one country that Mark Carney refuses to do a deal with Donald Trump. And we know that because of the tentacles of supply management the dairy cartel has wrapped into Quebec's largest pension fund. And if the dairy cartel goes down, then so do these pension funds. This is all a ridiculous intertwining of industry, geopolitics, and politicians.
Since they lost their benefits a number of years ago. So the programs that we're continuing to fund, the supports that we're providing to provinces and territories for families, and a number of other elements in the budget that are specific about the costs that families are facing are really important, as well as the investments to stimulate job creation and support people to get those jobs with the skilled trades training and other skills training they need.
On those costs, on bringing costs down, though, I take your point, and I wouldn't take away from the merits of some of the programs that you mentioned. But that is exactly as you framed it, a continuation of what the previous government already had in place. The new measures where housing affordability are concerned are just 60% essentially of the money that you promised you would allocate in the platform. Just 60% of it appears in the budget. You removed a tax a carbon tax that originally the previous government, including yourself, had told us would actually make life less affordable for people if it were removed. I understand that.
Just imagine that. They spent months, a year or two, saying that carbon tax was an affordability measure for all of us. We saved money. 8 out of 10 get more back than we pay. Yeah, right. That was all a grift. Everyone knew it, especially if you're from British Columbia or Quebec. The carbon taxes are dealt with provincially. In case of British Columbia, we get nothing back. We just pay in, and then what does the government do? They let First Nations steal land. That's what we get here. And for the rest of Canadians, they get told this wonderful story of something that doesn't really happen. Affordability measure.
That, you're saying that you're still doing stuff, but there's nothing in this budget that the people who are experiencing hardship would have said a day later makes their life any easier than it was a day before. Why is that?
Well, I think that's actually not true. I mean, look, the government could have chosen to end a number of programs that are making life deeply affordable for Canadians. Canada Child Benefit is making life more affordable for parents. The working income tax benefit, which is doubled, is making life more affordable for people who are working and earning low wages. We have, as you announced a number of different measures to make sure that the benefits that Canadians have accumulated can actually land in their bank accounts through automatic tax filing. And
they don't want to make life affordable for anyone, and they want to have full control. You need all of our benefits or you can't afford to live. That's what the Liberals are doing right now.
Finally, I would say in my own file, for example, adding 30,000 Canada Summer Jobs positions is a deep reflection of the challenge that youth are having in terms of finding jobs and getting that quality experience on the job. There's also additional supports for work integrated learning for young people who are currently studying, who want to experience paid learning in their sector, which we know results in better attachment to the workforce.
Good luck. Canadians aren't getting those jobs. There are no jobs. From one scam to another, we've got interprovincial trade barriers here. Talking about stumbling Jews, turns out they didn't remove those barriers.
I'm joined now by Keely Lepke. She's the Director of Interprovincial Affairs with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Good morning. Thanks for being with us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So what is the single biggest barrier preventing small alcohol producers from selling across provincial borders?
Well, it's not a single barrier. It's a barrier from each of the provinces and territories for small producers to be able to get their products into each of the provinces and territories. So they deal with things like labeling, markup, testing requirements that are different in each of those jurisdictions that make it really difficult to grow and expand beyond their home province.
So what's the solution? As we mentioned in the lead up, a lot has been done to sort of pave the way to make it easier to sell alcohol across the country. So what's lacking at this point?
Really, it's government standing in the way of moving things forward. There's been a lot of great talk about bringing up alcohol movement, but not a lot of action on the ground where we're able to see producers moving their products and consumers having more choice. So it really
government in the way, that's the problem. So the federal government said they got everything out of the way. It's open now. It's up to the provinces. The provinces said they're all on board. They're going to do it. Interprovincial trade barriers, bringing them down. Turns out they didn't bring them down. And this is just stumbling Jews. There's numerous examples here. These barriers are not taken down. It was a whole lot of talk, barely any action. Now, just to throw in some other news that's going on here, because there's a bunch all over Canada, but this is pretty important. We've got Ezra Levant of Rebel News over in the UK. Tommy Robinson has just been acquitted of all charges under the Terror Lord Act.
Ezra Levant here from Rebel News. I'm standing outside Westminster Magistrates Court news today. Tommy Robinson acquitted of charges under the Terrorism Act. The judge blistering in his criticism of the police, saying they lacked credibility and their testimony could not be relied on. In fact, the judge went further, saying that he believed that the primary reason the police arrested, detained, and interrogated Tommy in the first place was because of his political views, which is a protected characteristic of the movie. That is, you can't go after someone just because of their politics or their religion. And in fact, the police had no recollection of any questions they asked about terrorism. The judge particularly blunt about that. It's very encouraging for Tommy to be acquitted, because sometimes you feel like you have to give up on the system, that maybe Tommy can't get a fair trial anywhere. Today is proof that sometimes the system does work. And this is the second time Tommy has been successful at this very courthouse. Now, that still leaves Tommy behind. He spent countless hours on this, all the stress. Last night, he didn't know if he would be going home or going to prison. So it's a win for Tommy, but it doesn't get him further ahead. But hopefully the judge's bold comments will wake up the police and tell them, stop your multi-million-pound vendetta against Tommy Robinson. He's a political force. He's not a force of terrorism. And how about fix the problems in the country instead of going after the guy who highlights the problems?
This is good stuff. Got to take the good news when we get it.